hop into it. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into the new album, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging, throwing all of us into a tailspin, especially in Minnesota. Things were changing and transpiring in a very unique way. But for musicians, there were so many things that were happening. How did you ultimately survive the pandemic of 2020? And how has that radiated into music you make and the way that you live your life as a musician in 2025?
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, um, I was here in New York City, and let me see. I remember I had a gig on a Friday night. I played a hotel gig in Midtown Manhattan, and it was unusually warm, and so the front doors were open, and there was nobody in the bar, and there were just a few people on the street. But I remember on this warm March night playing music that was reverberating out into the streets. And I was playing with two musicians who I think we all realized we weren't going to play with people again for a while. And so it was really beautiful what came out of the music that night. The next day I got on a plane to be with my sweetheart in Vancouver, Canada, where she was working on a grad degree. And I ended up spending 2 years there in Vancouver, hanging around. There's a nice little jazz scene there, but I hung out, chilled out. I learned the guitar. A friend who's actually paid tribute to on this album started teaching me guitar via Zoom, and I started writing music on the guitar. And so I had a musical project going on in parallel, and came back to New York 3 years ago at this time of year. So yeah, I chilled out in Vancouver, and I was thinking of yeah, I was living in a neighborhood called Vancouver, called Kitsilano, and I was thinking of writing a tune called "Relaxin' at Kitsilano." It's sort of a tribute to the Charlie Parker "Relaxin' at Camarillo."
Yeah, yeah. It's weird. I remember because that Friday was the 13th, and it's weird how nature had it was such a cruel joke because it was Friday the 13th, and that's when everything kind of came to a close. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it was
but
all.
but all those stories I hear of New York being vacated. I remember a dude I talked to that lived right outside of Times Square in June, and he was like, "I'm looking outside right now, and it's drizzling, and there's no one out there. It's like the weirdest feeling in the world. Like, you know." Being vacated around the country is one thing, but when you get into an epicenter like LA and there's no traffic, or the Venice Canal clears up, or Times Square is empty, that's like Twilight Zone stuff.
I know, yeah, and I just saw the beginning of that, and then I came back as New York was cranking back up to speed,
Yeah.
with a couple less jazz clubs and some new faces, some faces that weren't on the scene anymore. But yeah, the scene is back.
It was like a rapture, man. It's like sometimes I look around at everybody and I'm like, man, we survived and we hit that fork in the road, and this was our decision, you know? So
Right.
it's interesting. So talk to me about the new album. What was kind of the artistic forces that went into this?
Yeah, I've always been inspired by people. I'm a bit of an empathic person, so I catch strong feelings from people. There's people I admire or have had strong experiences with. What that'll inspire me to sit down and write a tune. And I've accumulated a lot of these over the years. Some of them have appeared on prior albums, but this was a time where I had accumulated some of these, some of my favorite songs that were dedicated to people, and started to pull them together into a project. And of course, when you go into the studio, you never kind of know what's going to hit and miss. I try to go in with a couple of extra songs, but coming out of it, I'm like, okay, there's at least seven tributes to people, a combination of jazz luminaries like Wayne Shorter and Maria Schneider, but also people in the family. My friend Sandy Carter, I mentioned during the pandemic, taught me guitar. Been a friend of his for many years, and so all of these tunes started to come together. I convened a crack New York quartet, with Grant Richards on piano and Lauren Cohen on bass, and Jimmy McBride on drums. We went into the studio and really captured something special, and decided to call the album "In Lieu of Flowers" because we have many ways of paying tribute to people that are important in our lives. But for me, music is a prime way to do that.
And I love that title because it is kind of like sometimes you'll read an obituary and it'll say in lieu of flowers, and what a great gift to give the world metaphorically in music.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't always pay tribute while people are around. Sometimes it takes people leaving the scene, whether it's a Wayne Shorter, um, a Charles Mingus, a family friend. But but yeah, it's nice to also pay tribute while people are still around, and I have the chance to do that as well with music.
Speaking of baseball in Kansas City and kind of going back into that nostalgic route, poor Buck O'Neill, man, I wish they would have put him in the hall before he passed. And there didn't seem like there was any real reason not to, but they put him in, I think, a year or two after he passed.
Yeah, yeah. To realize how much impact somebody like that had on the game of baseball, and going there to the museum in Kansas City is one way to really get a sense, as I did, like, okay, this is one of the greats in baseball. Uh, Love the game, gave so much to it, and it'd be nice if he had his in lieu of flowers before he left the scene.
But the thing I got to say about Buck is that he's such a huge presence in Kansas City. We had a minor league team, still do, that was called the T-Bones. And it hit financial peril, so they renamed it the Monarchs, and it's in conjunction with the Negro Leagues Museum. So there's a
Mhm.
big 22 out there for Buck. And at the seventh inning stretch, there's a video of Buck singing it. And that's what we do to lead the seventh inning stretch is Buck. So there's so many layers of memorializing him. Avenues are named after him. There's a mural off 18th and Vine, so he's up there twinkling, man. I know he's looking down and feeling the love for sure.
That's great, and I'm glad he's got the local tributes as well as the deserved credit of being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this: take me back to your beginnings. How did music become a part of your world, and how did jazz evolve to become your career?
Yeah, I did come from a musical family. There was music in church growing up in small town Minnesota. I listened to things on the radio. When I was about 11 or 12, I picked up the saxophone, and my older brother started coming home with jazz records. And it was really inspiring to hear what this instrument, the saxophone, could do. And so a lot of these were big band things by Maynard Ferguson, Woody Herman, Buddy Rich, etc., as well as some early smooth jazz by maybe Grover Washington. And so I started to hear what this instrument could do, and had great educational opportunities for a small town to be in a stage band, as it was called, from eighth grade to have a jazz band in high school, to have a new band director come in and say, you know what, you could apply to, there's an all-state jazz band, you could apply to that. And so educational opportunities as well as springboarding into college, having the opportunity to play um, just about every day in a jazz ensemble through college. So all of this led to me really digging into the beauty of the music, the potential of it, and eventually becoming inspired to move to New York and become a part of the scene.
What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away that made you think, I want to get up there and do that one day?
Well, I was pretty lucky from a timing standpoint of, again, I'm growing up in a small town like 30 miles away from a place called Duluth, the town that's now about 80,000 people. But they had a university, and they brought in some artists. And so when I was a junior in high school, I said to my band director, there's a professional saxophonist who's coming to town. I use the word professional because that was like, the pinnacle. And I was like, have you heard of Sonny Rollins? And and he said, I think you should go. I think you should go. And then around that same time, Freddie Hubbard came to town with his LA-based quintet with Billy Childs and Steve Houghton and Herbie Lewis and Bob Shepard on the sax. And so I was able to hear some of these groups. I would say when I heard Freddie Hubbard's group play Red Clay um, live as a student, I was like, okay, this is amazing. I'd
Oh,
love to be a part of this.
so was he just powerful on that instrument? Did it just hit you like in a special way? I mean, because he's on his recordings, it's like he is like Maynard. There's a power that goes into him playing that horn.
Yeah, I think the overall impact of the group was very powerful. Freddie at that time he was playing on an album, a song called Misty. It's actually kind of to play a tune that some might consider corny
Yeah.
or out of a Clint Eastwood movie and to bring the sensitivity that he could to it was very moving. But I would say it wasn't until later that I dug into Freddie's music some more and realized that he's one of my favorite all-time musicians, and actually got to work with him a little bit when I was at a record label in New York and get to know Freddie a little bit. And that also colors my feelings and impressions of his music.
And I think that's the beauty of this jazz community is that a lot of the heroes become contemporaries, become people that you get the chance to play and learn from. And with that in mind, what have you taken from all of these years that you've been on the bandstand and being around legends? What do you try to impart on young players that you get around?
Yeah. So, being around players on the bandstand, what I've really been inspired by is their commitment to spontaneity, uh, commitment to not trying to control exactly how everything goes, to be flexible on the bandstand. Things are always happening. The cash register is ringing. There might be a glitch in the sound or the lights, and really commitment to making it happen for the audience. I do work with students today. I teach adult jazz combos. I was with one of these groups last night, and yeah, really the commitment to spontaneity, to developing the tools to you can get to the point where you are on a stand, you're playing music, and to be at a point where you're free enough to say, I don't know what I'm going to be playing in 2 seconds, but I know there's going to be the support of this group. I'm going to trust my intuitions. And it's hard to get into that place and stay in that place. But when you've been around a master who's in that space, it's something you aspire to get to as often as possible.
So what do you like the best about being a professional musician after all these years? What gets you up? What allows you to create and evolve all the time in your craft?
Um, yeah, just yesterday I was sitting in practice room. I live across the street from a conservatory, Brooklyn Conservatory of Music. Put in a little plug, and Uh, I was just working on a tune. It was actually a Wayne Shorter tune, and I was committing to learn it from memory. And just the process of exploring the music, to take your time with it, to learn it by ear, to take it in, to feel what it means, the feelings that it elicits, to get to the essence of it, and to become a channel for that music is really inspiring. So I guess as I've grown and I didn't like to practice when I was a teenager. I wanted to practice as little as possible and get credit for like being able to play without um, spending all my time in a practice room. Now I treasure that time, and I treasure taking that same music to a stand, introducing it to students, or playing it with great people, and finding that spontaneous space.
So, the one thing about living through the pandemic for live musicians is that itineraries went away. There was this absence of being on the stage for a little while. During that time, did you have memories or like a memory or special memories that were kind of magical of being on stage that kind of fueled you until you got back up there on the stage?
Um, I certainly thought of the last time I played before leaving New York right as the pandemic was underway. So I thought about that night, about playing with people, treasuring the moment, feeling that we were all present, that it was very special, that this music was very important to us. So I thought back to that night. And then, I thought about the recordings that are available to us. I mean, you have a jazz radio show, that brings people wonderful recorded music. And so there's all of that to tap into and study. But yeah, I thought of that moment, and I thought of great moments I've seen people performing, um, or sharing the stage with them.
I've talked about this a lot, but on March 3rd of 2020, I went to see Bill Frisell. And I just got married in 2019. I'd been with my wife for a few years, and so she was getting baptized in jazz. It was just it's a niche thing. So she was before we went in, she was like, "What am I supposed to expect from Bill Frisell?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like I can tell you other people, but I don't know what he's going to do." So he got up there with the trio, and Petra Hayden was with him, and she has a wonderful voice and great stage command. And at that point, the first coronavirus was detected in Kansas or Missouri. So it was very pedestrian, 10 days before the shutdown. And at one point, they played We Shall Overcome. And Petra told everybody to kind of join in. And everybody started standing up like cattle waiting for the tornado to come in, right? So it's
Mhm.
like we did that. And then, of course, right after that, they play Ziggy Stardust, which is like a part of the eclectic nature of a Bill Frisell show. But I always remember that show because there was something in the air where we all knew something was brewing. We didn't know what, but that was one of the most profound live experiences ever, and it just happened to be before the world shut down.
That's great that they were tapping into the feeling of the moment. Bill's an inspiring musician and a character on the scene. When I lived in Seattle for a few years, I know that he lived in a neighborhood called Ballard, and he was like a person in that neighborhood. And so one day I walked by a venue he was playing in, and I saw this kind of retro Volvo parked outside. I was like, "That's Bill Frisell's car." Like his taste, his coolness, his nerdy coolness comes through in so many of his choices and so much in his music.
And the way he played that guitar, it was almost like he was pulling the strings off the fret. Like he was just ring. I'd never seen anybody play a guitar like that. It was absolutely fascinating to see up close.
Yeah, and he's been a part of so many inspiring groups. You asked about some of them. His trio with Paul Motion and Joe Lovano, to see them at the Village Vanguard a couple of times, and see the space that they were playing from is really inspiring. Very what musicians call rubato, like they're not trying to play 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4. They're playing a tune, it may be a monk tune, might be original, but they're just floating and responding and masters of their craft.
For sure. So why do you love this art form that we call jazz?
I love it because it's an avenue for emotional expression. It's like I grew up a reserved person from the Midwest. Um, as Garrison Keillor would say, there's a lot of Lutherans in Minnesota, a lot of people of Scandinavian Stoic backgrounds, and that's true of my family and my surroundings. But so it allows me to get in touch with things, including my feelings of about people, which come through in this new album. But yeah, and it also speaks to um, you know connections between people. It speaks to the African American experience um, in this world and in this country, and it gets me moving. I remember once hearing Joey DeFrancesco play the Blue Note with David Sanborn and I think Joey Barron, and I'd never had this happen before. The day after the show, which is a great show, the feeling of that music was so strong. I literally still felt it in my body. There was energy in my body from sitting in a chair and hearing music in a club. And I thought, well, that's a powerful force. And so I like being a part of something that has that kind of power and potential to change people's days and their lives.
Joey was one of those interviews I really, really wanted so badly for a long time. And I got it about 6 to 8 months before he passed. And when we were talking, he
Mhm.
was kind of hitting a rendezvous. I think it was around the pandemic where he was branching out. He was playing the piano more, and I think he was noodling on other instruments. There was just kind of a renaissance period that was he was kind of getting into, which was he was amazing, man. I mean, I just couldn't imagine even seeing his dad and him together hitting that Hammond because that in itself is already a powerful vibration in the air. And then if you put a lot of soul behind that, it's going to hit you hard.
Yeah, I actually did write a tune on a previous album for Joey, and it was called Blue Innuendo.
Yeah.
And kind of what the title meant to me is that like when you add organ to a jazz context, it turns everything into the blues, or there's a touch of the blues or swing and everything. In fact, I remember hearing an organ group in the Green Lady there in Kansas City,
Yeah.
uh, in that room, and just hearing the feeling of this instrument. So I thought like it puts this blues inflection on everything, and so I recorded an organ um, an organ quartet album with Pat Bianchi, who was a protege of
Yeah.
Joey's. But I also had a chance to meet Joey. He was coming to a radio studio, And I gave him a written copy of this tune, and I said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know I wrote this for you." And I haven't really told the story before, but he's like, "Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot, man." In this kind of cool, understated way. Um, and then he played a radio show and played his butt off.
Yeah,
But I would, it's all that was, I guess, a chance to be able to thank somebody in person
totally.
for their impact and show at least in one moment to show them that, hey, your music is really affecting people in a positive way.
Totally. It's funny when you mentioned the Hammond, I immediately went. The guy you're talking about is Ken Laverne. He's the guy that plays at the Green Lady a lot. I was
Okay.
immediately thinking that's the Church of Jazz. That's the Red Velvet. That's where the vampires go to sip on their ales and listen to music. So, yeah, that's funny.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like it there? Did you dig the vibe?
Well, I did. It was an essential part of a Kansas City experience is to go to a present day jazz club
Yeah.
at Great Room. It's also run by Todd Wilkinson, who I didn't run into that day, but Todd's somebody I played with years ago. He's a saxophonist as well.
Yeah.
And we played in a big band section at the Aspen Music Festival. And in the band was Ryan Kaiser and Scott Whitfield and Clarence Penn and all these cats. But it was a pleasure to get to know Todd and see that he's got a happening venue right there in KC.
Yeah. Scott Whitfield, he was on K-Jazz a few weeks ago. I love listening to K-Jazz and KCSM. And they had this, he had an album called Postcards from Hollywood, and he was playing the Imperial March from Star Wars, and it was so cool. Like I had to put it on my show the next week. It was so awesome. Just
Right.
because I've heard like covers of Star Wars things, but the way he had it, and I think John Williams was actually there orchestrating some of it. It was so smooth, man. Such a great tune. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott's a wonderful musician, a great composer and arranger and trombonist.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, colleagues, everyone that you teach, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think uh, I am a perceptive, um, uh, yeah, I'm a perceptive soul who's very enthusiastic about my passions, which run from jazz to baseball to family history and any number of things. But I'm somebody who, um, yeah, experiences the world ideally in a strong way, um, and has the opportunity. Life's given me the opportunity to take some of these vibrations and turn them into music that I can share with other people. But yeah, I would say I'm a curious, sensitive soul who loves to pick things up and put good vibrations back out into the world.
What a great answer. And Lieu of Flowers is the latest album. If anyone wants to pick that up, any of your previous albums, Catch You Live, where's the best place for the people to go to find that out?
Yeah, DaveAndersonJazz.com has my itinerary. I have all of my albums on Bandcamp, which treats albums very well, and it also lets composers write little blurbs what the songs are about.
Yeah.
People can choose their music in any format, and I'm on any of the digital channels. So if somebody wants to check out In Lieu of Flowers by Dave Anderson, they'll find it anywhere they like to consume music.
Right on. I will put all the links in the show notes. Dave, what a joy, man. This has been great. I'm glad we hooked up. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much.